European leaders back Ukraine in the meeting. French President Emmanuel Macron says trilateral only way to stop the war. Starmer says saw progress on security guarantees. Meloni says ready to bring proposals for peace and dialogue. In fact, European Union chief says demand lasting peace in Ukraine. These are the statements which were made by the European leaders who were also a part of the meeting with Donald Trump and Ukrainian president. The European leaders backed the Ukrainian president in the meeting. French President Emmanuel Macron said that a trilateral meeting is the only way to stop this war between Russia and Ukraine. Keir Starmer said that he saw progress on the security guarantees. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni said that ready to bring proposals for peace and dialogue, and the European Union chief said that they demand a lasting peace in Ukraine. So these were the statements and the demands which were made by the European leaders, clearly backing the Ukrainian president in the meeting. And Trump not only welcomed the Ukrainian President Zelensky, but also met with the European Union leaders in his office. Listen in to what all the leaders had to say.
Now he's the NATO Secretary General, and you're doing a fantastic job. Thank you very much, Mark.
This is why the idea of a trilateral meeting is very important, because this is the only way to fix it. And by the way, I think as a follow-up, we would need probably a quadrilateral meeting, because when we speak about security guarantees, we speak about the whole security of the European continent. And this is why we are all united here with Ukraine on this matter. In order to organize such a trilateral meeting, your idea to ask for a truce or ceasefire, at least to stop the killings, as we discussed, is a necessity.
We're going to try and work out a trilat after that and see if we can.
The next steps ahead are the more complicated ones now. The path is open. You opened it last Friday. But now the way is open for complicated negotiations. And to be honest, we all would like to see a ceasefire, the latest from the next meeting on. I can't imagine that the next meeting would take place without a ceasefire. So let's work on that, and let's try to put pressure on Russia, because the credibility of these efforts we are undertaking today are depending on at least a ceasefire from the beginning of the serious negotiations from next step on. So I would like to emphasize this aspect and would like to see a ceasefire from the next meeting, which should be a trilateral meeting wherever.
And we're now being joined by Daniel Block, who's a senior editor, Foreign Affairs from New York. Daniel, the big meeting has happened between Donald Trump and Zelensky. And in fact, Zelensky has called it the best meeting yet with Donald Trump. So can we say a breakthrough is near?
I don't think we can say a breakthrough is near. This certainly was the best meeting between Zelensky and Trump, although the bar for that was exceptionally low. But if anything, it seems right now like the status quo is set to continue. Zelensky has walked out this time rather than with a blow up, and with Trump cutting off U.S. military assistance and intelligence sharing, with Trump saying that there's a new deal between Zelensky and Trump for continued military assistance to Ukraine. But as much as Trump says that a breakthrough is coming, or that there's going to be negotiations soon that will put a stop to the war, I just don't see how Russia's red lines and Ukraine's red lines are compatible at this moment.
Right. Also, US has guaranteed security to Ukraine. Do you think it is realistically possible?
Well, it's hard to say. Trump hasn't ruled out, as you noted, sending U.S. troops into Ukraine as part of a peace agreement in order to make sure that fighting doesn't resume there. But I think that would go over poorly with a lot of his political base. So whether he's serious about that or not, it's hard to say. That said, many things about the course of this war have been surprising, so I don't want to take anything off the table.
But it is also pertinent to note that a security guarantee was also given in 1994. Still, we saw in 2014 Crimea being taken away.
Of course, I think that, and Ukraine, I think, has learned that lesson well. They're not going to agree, at least certainly not right now, or not in the near future, to a peace deal where there is not some more firm security guarantee or some real system backing that up. And that's the whole reason why you have countries in Europe, and now perhaps even the United States, talking about stationing NATO-affiliated troops on the ground in Ukraine. Because Ukraine doesn't trust Russia to keep its word, and rightfully so. As you said, in the 1990s, they got security guarantees on paper that proved useless in practice. During the course of the 2010s, Russia promised at various points after it first invaded Crimea and the Donbass that it would no longer, that it would stop fighting, that it would agree to some sort of peace deal, only to resume the fighting again. So Ukraine has no reason to trust Russia, and that's the whole reason why there's talk about putting boots on the ground.
Right. And also, do you think a peace between Russia and Ukraine is possible without Ukraine surrendering their land to Russia?
I have a lot of trouble imagining that it is. In fact, I think we can probably rule that out right now. I really struggle to think of a situation where Putin would agree to any kind of ceasefire deal without major land concessions from Ukraine. In fact, I think that the land Putin has demanded from Ukraine right now is actually short of what he really would want for the country in exchange for peace. I mean, since the beginning of the war, Russia has had fairly maximalist objectives. It wants, it wants a lot of the country, and it wants to exercise domain over almost the entire country in some way, shape, or form, which is why, frankly, I'm skeptical that real peace negotiations could happen right now anyway.
Also, earlier, Zelensky was adamant that he won't give away any land to Russia. But in the meeting with Donald Trump, he reportedly said that the territorial dispute will be handled with Putin. So does that show a shift in his stand?
I think that privately, Ukrainian government officials are not entirely closed off to the notion of trading some land in exchange for peace. There are various ways you could go about doing it. They could do it perhaps without formally acknowledging that they were giving over land. That said, publicly, my understanding is that within Ukraine, the idea of surrendering any land remains extremely unpopular. And the Ukrainians are obviously tired of this war, but the will to fight there in many ways remains pretty strong. And so I don't think he's in a position where he can publicly say he's willing to surrender land, at least not yet.
Right.